Awesome. Today we are live on SEO Leadership webinar with Graham. He's the SEO director at PMX. We are so excited to have Graham on today. And how are you keeping?
I'm good, thank you. How are you both?
Perfect.
Can be better.
Darius is on cloud nine. We just wanted to quickly kick things off and ask you, just for the audience's sake, if you could give us a little bit of a background on how you got into SEO and how you landed up at your role now currently at 26 PMX.
Yeah, sure. So I guess it's going back a little bit now. So the journey started about 2011. I started off at a really small marketing agency where I'm from, a place called Tamworth. It was at that agency. Well, I had an opportunity to go to university, but I decided to kind of basically they offered me a job there, and then they said, "Have you heard of something called SEO?" And I said no, and I basically learned on the job there, and I was working on some really small clients, and then got an opportunity to move away and come up to Leeds, and I started at 26 as a junior SEO, and then worked my way up from there. And I've been at I was there for 5 years. So I went from junior SEO to senior SEO analyst, and then just had sort of a couple of people I was line managing. Then I went over to Enjoy Digital as SEO manager for a couple of years. Sort of similar role to what I was doing at 26, but there was less people there, and there was the things and processes that needs to be developed. And then I sort of did something completely different. I went and worked at a company called Elementary Digital, which were I guess from sort of a much smaller agency. I suppose they weren't really known for digital marketing, more known for development and design. And then just built it up there really, pretty much from scratch. They had a couple of clients, and then we built it up over time, over about 2.5 years. And then I got to the end of that and decided I'd go back to a kind of bigger, more specialized performing marketing agency. I went over to Blue Claw for a couple of years. We built that out. Then they got acquired by XL Media. It kind of went a bit more in-house basically. And then just at the end of last year, decided that wanted a new challenge, and started come back full circle really, come back to 26 just by chance more than anything, rather than sort of opportunity. Landed at SEO director here. So my responsibility now is basically for the whole of the SEO team within tech SEO, content, and digital PR. So we've got some really fantastic clients, and we've got a really good, fairly small team at the moment. I'm going to start building that back out again. But yeah, really good clients. We've got like Stella McCartney, Dior. We've got eBuyer, Victoria Beckham, some really good, nice fashion clients. So yeah, it's an exciting place to be.
Awesome. Just quickly, you mentioned that you had sort of fell into SEO at the beginning. For anyone that is watching that's considering SEO as a career opportunity, do you have any sort of specific key tips that you can give them to maybe consider nowadays? Because obviously the industry and the department as a whole has evolved since then. Are there any ways that I guess marketers that are looking to specialize in SEO or anything like that, how they could sort of build their skill sets up?
Yeah, I guess for me, it's about what I would do is create your own site and do it yourself really. And I mean, there's so much. When I was starting, there was information out there, but there wasn't a huge amount of information. It's now absolutely everywhere. There's almost too much information that you can get overwhelmed with it. So for me, it's utilizing that information, but then actually putting it into theory. creating your own site and starting to, do something you're interested in. You can create like a site that's generate affiliate income from, or start a Shopify e-commerce site, and then start testing these things that you're learning and just go for it and see what happens. Invest a bit of time into it. That's the best skill set I'd say that you can take to any kind of any position really. There's a lot of information out there, but yeah, it's about actually putting that to you to test and actually doing it.
Definitely. And Graham, you mentioned about finding information. Obviously, as you said, there's a lot of noise, especially like LinkedIn and stuff like that. Is there anywhere in particular that one or two things that you would recommend, like newsletters or people to follow on LinkedIn, that you sort of where you get your updates from or get some inspiration from?
There's quite. I mean, there's the obvious ones in terms of things like Search Engine Land and SEO Roundtable and the Google Search Console blog in general. To be perfectly honest, obviously they're fairly easy sources of truth. I don't know if there's anyone in particular really that I follow. I mean, there's a few people like Daniel Foley Carter's someone I find quite interesting, just because he goes into so much depth, and there's some good stuff that he pulls out sometimes. So I suppose that's somebody that I find quite interesting. But yeah, I think just generally, if you're new to SEO, is not to get too overwhelmed by all of the influencers out there, because sometimes there's a lot of information, but there's not necessarily evidence of what's how they've actually gone and done that. So it's kind of sourcing those people, source for the weeds, I suppose. So as a starting point, I'd say probably just if you're looking at some of those general websites like Search Engine Journal, Search Engine, then that's a good place to start and not get yourself engrossed too much in it. But there is some people out there on LinkedIn that definitely you can look at.
Brilliant, awesome. Brilliant. And I know Ben has put in just, do you have your biggest tip from going from SEO manager to SEO director? Because obviously you've progressed quite quickly, had a lot of roles. Do you have anything in mind that you can sort of offer?
I guess it's just knowing to taking leadership really, taking responsibility. I suppose it probably needs in what sort of context you're talking about. You're talking about in-house, you're talking about in agency. It's kind of different from that point of view, but I suppose the SEO director always is it's a purely leadership role. It's about trying to find ways to innovate. It's trying to solve problems with you, on a people skill level as well. Whereas SEO manager, I suppose, traditionally is you're managing a smaller amount of people, but you're still managing quite a few clients. That might not be the case for Ben, but just I suppose from my point of view, that's what that is.
Awesome.
Excellent.
And in your sort of line of career progression as well, was there any sort of management styles that inspired you in your management style in particular?
That's a good question. I suppose not having a man manager is important. Someone man managing you and constantly watching what you're doing. You need freedom. Obviously, that comes from like trust as well. But for me, I've sort of like built my career off the back of like being enthusiastic and having like a positive attitude, driven attitude to want to get results. So whenever I've come across or been managed by people like that, I suppose that sort of aligns to my sort of philosophy of how I go about things. But I suppose there's bits and bobs that you take along the way. But then you sort of develop your own style as you go along. I mean, I've never done any. I was going to say I've never done any training. I have done some director level training at my last job, but to be perfectly honest, I think the best training you can get is on the job, from my perspective. you grow over time as you go through different roles and go through different experiences.
Cool.
I love it. And Ben, just to go back to when you were sort of going through your career history, you mentioned that you went from obviously 26 as like a senior SEO analyst, which is obviously a huge agency, to I think it was Enjoy Digital, to SEO manager level, obviously a bit smaller. You were talking about sort of introducing processes and things like that. Are there any sort of like key like SOPs that you can introduce from having that big agency knowledge that a lot of like smaller agencies could benefit from?
Yeah, I guess so. I think it's more from like I suppose a planning perspective, and but it's got one of the things that I remember is goal setting within sort of KPIs and being driven by basically what the business wants to achieve, and then setting KPIs for that from an SEO point of view. I guess probably some smaller agencies, it's a bit more like we'll just do an auditing phase and then we'll go away and we'll do tasks, but it's actually like, well, what's the actual commercial impact of that? What's the actual business focus? And how can we build SEO KPIs around that to essentially meet that focus? So I suppose it's the key takeaway from that is building processes that are commercially driven. And I think that's a challenge for quite a lot of SEO agencies and in general, to be perfectly honest. And probably SEOs as well. It's challenging the commercial reason for why you need to do something, and it's something that we're challenging the team with at the moment as well. It's fine having a list of tasks in terms of SEO, but it's then understanding what the impact of that is from a commercial point of view further down the line, rather than just like, oh, I've implemented a ton of title tag changes and it's had this ranking effect, but okay, well then we've just left it. It's like, well, actually, no, what's actually been the fault? Is it an increase in traffic? Is it helped increase engagement on the page, revenue, etc.? So it's looking at that fuller picture, really.
Awesome. Just on that topic, we actually are putting together a Hiring OS system, which is basically just covering onboarding and SOPs and all things involved in the hiring process. And you are in a unique situation that I feel it's only fair to ask this question. You have been previously with 26. They allowed you to leave the company for a little while and then come back to 26 PMX. How was the onboarding style the first time around compared to the second time around? And how have you sort of put your own unique stamp on it? And also, how was the offboarding, I guess? Was it something that they were, was a positive sort of let go process and things like that? Yeah.
So is that the onboarding for me coming in?
Yeah.
Or right, okay. So when I first started at 26, the sort of performance marketing team, I think there was probably only about 15 people. There's now about sort of 50, 60 people. So, and the head of search then is now the CEO. So, it was kind of well, I suppose it was a fairly formal interview process from what I remember. It's going back a long time, so I can't really properly remember. But I suppose when I came back, it was slightly different, but familiar faces and all that. I suppose there was a lot more processes in place for for when you came on board from the last time that I was there, and it had changed quite a bit. So you kind of see now that the agency had grown and developed as well with myself, so it was good. I think how was the question? But yeah.
And how was the sort of I guess handover process with you coming in? Was there like a 90-day plan or something like that? Was there how did you sort of handle managing your team and understanding your team while also learning to put your own unique stamp on the team without being too micromanaged?
I think for me, with this that question, so when I came in, there was a certain amount of things that were, I guess, issues, things that needed to be resolved. So I sort of like identified them, and then came up with a list of objectives that I needed to achieve, and then came up with a plan myself to understand how we were going to achieve that. But in between that, the first 2-3 weeks is building relationships and trust, because at the end of the day, if you come in and you say you can do all these things but then you can't, then you'll eventually lose trust. So it's understanding, obviously, those objectives, setting a plan and setting priorities that are going to be able to get you to where you want to be. So yeah, I think trust is a really key factor in that onboarding process and building those relationships, and having a plan in place, and sticking to that plan as well, which is not always easy. But yeah, that's my sort of my process of how I went about this at Blueclaw, and then also at 26. And there's hurdles and stuff that come along the way, but yeah, we're getting there now.
Awesome. Cool.
And Graham, I know you mentioned before about sort of helping, you're training the team at the minute to talk in terms of like revenue and making sort of more commercially aware. What are you sort of doing that because, or how are you sort of doing that? Is there any sort of training tips or anything like that? Because we speak to a lot of SEOs and all of them are sort of, we're trying to push the same thing, that to get to those sort of higher salary roles, you need to be able to talk to like C-suite and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Showcase how, and even I suppose from your perspective as an SEO director, it makes it probably a lot easier to, if you are looking to grow out the team or add a new team member, if you can show this, and this is my department, this is the money that we're bringing in, like show how valuable the SEO team is to the overall agency, that it can actually lead to growth as well. So what sort of actions do you have for your team or for anybody else looking to learn?
Yeah. So actually, there's two things that I would say, because we're going through a process at the moment whereby we're kind of working backwards, and we're going, well, what for all of our clients, what are the objectives? What are they trying to achieve? How are we going to help them achieve that? What KPIs can we set to measure ourselves? And then what activity can we do to actually meet that? I mean, those are the 4 simple steps on a really, really top level that I would take across to any client. So I'm trying to educate that across all of the team. And some people have done similar things before, and some people never have done. So they've got to buy into that as well. I think to support that, one of the guys in my team, Ash, actually sent over a really good course that we're going to sign up to. You might have already sort of have other people on that have spoke about this, but there's a course that Tom Critchlow does called SEO MBA.
Yeah.
If you want to make a note of that in the chat or anything like that, I can send a link. Actually, I've just pulled it up. I'll just drop it in. But this is basically it's a course designed for SEOs to kind of be able to speak to C-suite people at a level to speak about revenue. So I think they got a deal on at the moment as well. I should be an affiliate if I'm doing this now. They've got a deal on to sign up for $500, I think, by the end of September. So by the end of August, I think. So yeah, I think we'll get a few people on that course. But yeah, looks like Tom Critchlow's obviously been someone who's been around a very long time and well respected in the industry. So I think it's definitely worthwhile spending that money. Put that into the team, and everybody's kind of thinking on those same commercial lines then. And also it's something that we probably ask our client services team to watch as well, because it's good for them to get that knowledge as well.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Do you think sort of being able to speak like that in terms of understanding more the effect that SEO has on sort of bottom line, do you think that's actually helped bring on those sort of big clients that you mentioned, when you can actually show them that and talk to them like that in your pitch, rather than talking about like click-through rate, impressions and stuff like that?
Yeah, undoubtedly. I mean, it's just being able to speak to, I suppose, people on the same level. and not getting too lost in the detail of all the other metrics, which sometimes you have to talk about, but if you use that as kind of like your key leverage of trying to win a pitch, then they can't really relate to it. It's really a second real tertiary KPI really. So it's always trying to get back to that bottom line of rev, and if you're forecasting, then you want to be forecasting revenue really, and not sort of like a sort of share of voice or anything. But I think that's fine to use as like an SEO KPI when you've won the client, because but that's something you can control. But when you're talking about revenue in a pitch, then it is obviously a better thing to measure against and show your value.
I'm laughing because I think SEO MBA has a few influencers out there as well. Ashley also posted it $500 by the end of August 31st. So yeah, it's quite a popular one if anyone's listening and wants to check that out. We've also explored SEO MBA recently in one of our resources. So yeah, they are killing it at the moment. A very interesting course. I actually wanted to flip the question back to you though. In addition to all of that you've been prepping your team for, how did you pick up the skills when you were going through your career progression in terms of speaking to C-suite and also to just client side as well? How did you sort of practice developing those skill sets up?
That's an interesting question. I guess it comes with experience. There's certainly mistakes that you make along the way, and you obviously learn from those. I suppose it's taking an interest in the business and understanding the business is really important. Not going in blind and just thinking from an SEO point of view. You've got to think about what the business would want, and asking, for me, always asking questions rather than trying to come up with the answers in, say, for example, a pitch, and always asking questions, to be perfectly honest. Because usually then you're able to open up that conversation more rather than trying to provide the answer straight away, which you're not going to be able to do, obviously. So, for me, it's more just the experience, really, more than anything, over time. I can't pinpoint one thing that's probably that's helped me on that. I suppose as well, when I was sort of like 21, 22, probably confidence wise, it probably wasn't as strong to be able to speak to somebody who was a C-suite member, and then you build up that over time, don't you? So but age isn't anything that you should stop you. It's just if you're confident in what you say and what you can deliver, and you can relate it back to those guys from a commercial point of view, then you just back yourself, really.
Awesome. Yeah, I actually really love that. Yeah.
Graham, obviously managing sort of a big team at the minute. Previously as well, I think you managed, is it European teams and stuff like that? Is that
right? Yeah.
How do you sort of drive innovation, or let your team become more innovative at the minute? Is there any ways you can do that, especially with likes like AI coming up? How do you sort of make sure that your team is keeping on top of it?
So we just, to be honest, we've just done something, or we do like it was the first one we've actually managed to do, but we're going to try and do it every month now. Is we do like a SEO workshop every month. So we'll get everybody into the office. Obviously, you can't always get everyone into the office, but for the purposes of this, you say either on Teams or in the office. And we did a big like mural board session on basically different things, different subjects. So things like AI and how we were going to tackle it. What the tools we want, anything that we want to innovate, how we're going to go about it, what's going to be our process, how are we going to win against it, what are the competitors doing, what's the industry saying, all of those different things. So really my approach is that get everybody together in a room, and then plan out our ideas, and then we put that into a roadmap then to say this is what we're going to try and achieve over the next 6 months. and then
Excellent.
revisit that, in the next workshop to see where we're at. And it's like, then what's next? I mean, AI overviews they've just released in the UK. That's like 24 hours, so we're already like, right, we're on a call this morning. Well, what's our process for this? Like, but that's just, I guess back of the fag packet, and then we can start broaching that out. But I suppose that's with SEO. Sometimes you have to just be thinking on your feet, and then you think in a bigger picture, like how you can innovate that more.
Definitely. And I know you mentioned that your CEO at the minute used to be the head of search.
Yeah.
Obviously, sometimes usually in the bigger agencies, it takes a while to get things sort of signed off and get stuff approved. Him coming from that experience, is it actually worked in your benefit that he is more sort of flexible and open to like becoming more like AI assisted in your approach?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't deal directly with him a lot of the time now. I deal with my boss who does sit on the exec team, and he comes from, he was head of paid for a long time. So yeah, he totally gets it, and he still likes going in the in the weeds and stuff. So if there's something that needs to be signed off, he understands the urgency of it. And as long as you build a strong case to say, well, why do we need this? How is it going to make our lives easier? How is it going to make our clients easier and ultimately generate more revenue? Then yeah, they can relate to that. I've worked with CEOs in the past that I guess probably that's slightly different. They don't quite understand that, or don't have that understanding. So it's important, I suppose, from that point of view.
Awesome. Sort of a two-part question. Have you put together sort of a hiring forecast, or how do you tackle hiring forecasts when growing your team? It's sort of a big question that whenever we ask webinar guests, they're always like, great question. It's something that they generally struggle with, and we'd love to sort of hold space for that conversation to grow. So yeah, do you have a hiring forecast, and how do you tackle it? And second to that, just on the innovation side of things, the topic of innovation, how do you sort of assess when you are hiring for people to join your team and identify, that drive for innovation and passion within them?
I guess we don't really have a hiring forecast at the moment in terms of that, of when we're going to hire. It's, I suppose, we have a forecast of our growth and where we want to be in the next 6 months, so we can kind of say, right, well, based on that, we'll need that hire in there. But in terms of like a hiring forecast, I suppose that's not something I've personally got at the moment. I'd be interested to hear if anyone else has got something like that, or even get involved in any further talks or anything that you guys do about it. But yeah, I guess it's based on projecting, working with the sales and marketing team and understanding what their focus is and what's in the pipeline, and then we can sort of project when we might need a hire based on that with a timeline. Yeah, that's probably the answer to that question, really. And what was the second question?
So the second question is sort of, when you do hire, how do you sort of identify sort of the softer skills within your SEOs that you would want on your team, such as like when you are having those innovation meetings or the strategy meetings? How do you identify team players when you are approaching the hiring process?
That's a really good question. I guess a lot of it is, for me, it's around communication and energy, enthusiasm, and attitude. Really, I think you can take those four skill sets straight away, and how they communicate on that initial sort of interview call, then you get a good sense of whether they're going to be a team player. Obviously, you've got previous experience of being within teams, of being active within that, and having ideas, then that's great. But yeah, I think for me, if you've got that sort of positive attitude and you've got energy and you're full of ideas and you're not afraid to say it, then that sort of stands out quite instantly when you're in an interview process. For me, you can. There's some in our industry, being honest, that there is people who don't want to do that. They want to, they just want to do SEO, and that's absolutely fine, and they don't want to get involved in lots of meetings and chatting and communicating, and they want to just crack on. And I think that that's absolutely fine, depending on what you're trying to hire for. But I think communication is quite a key part of that now, especially if you're working remotely as well. You need to be able to afford that. So,
yeah, 100%. Cool. Well, that wraps up our time. Graham, that was a really incredible webinar session. So thank you so much for all of your insight. And yeah, we really appreciate all the tips and advice. Yeah, and we are just wishing you and your team all the best at 26 PMX. If you ever need anything, give us a shout. And if anyone's listening and wants to follow Graham and his team, you can check it out in our links below. And yeah, have a great weekend, and we'll chat very soon.
Thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it. Thank you. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, Graham.
Yes.